Hey, Andrew.
Yes, Stephen?
You know how we romanticize the days of going out to our local video store and sifting through endless amounts of movies, searching for our favorite films, and maybe even finding some hidden gems?
Oh yes, I know it all too well. That used to be my favorite thing to do. Unfortunately, everything is online now.
Well, what if I told you that there was a place online where you could get some of them same thrills as going to the video store?
Are you talking about Orbit DVD?
I knew you knew what I was talking about. Orbit DVD is located in Asheville, North Carolina, and online with OrbitDVD.com, they bring you everything your physical media heart desires.
Yeah, they have an awesome website that stays up to date with the latest releases from all of your favorite boutique labels as well as studio releases. Not only do they carry American labels such as Criterion Collection, Severin Films, Vinegar Syndrome, and Warner Archive, but they get routine shipments on imports from companies such as 88 Films, Arrow Video, Imprint, and so much more.
And with the option to sell or trade your used copies for cash or store credit, they really bring that video store vibe to you. So go to OrbitDVD.com and stock up on your Blu-rays.
And tell them Chasing Labels sent you.
Welcome to another episode of Chasing Labels. I am your host, Stephen Billings, and with me, as always, is your other host, Andrew Cabral. How you doing, man?
Doing good, Stephen. Doing good. We're back here once again. This is spine number 75. At least I hope it's 75, or else I just made that up.
Yeah,
it is
no,
good.
It is.
Good.
Yeah.
I always have to check with Stephen on these things. But we are a quarter of the way towards the century mark, towards 100. Will we get there? Remains to be seen. I think we will, though.
Once again, you correlate time with our episodes. Like, we don't do one a year. Like, it's...
I know. But it's metaphors, it's allegories.
I know. You're all about the metaphors.
On the radio.
No, it doesn't. And we're not on the radio. We're on the internet.
It's like internet radio at this point.
Okay, fine. But as usual, we have another great guest that we were going to discuss some film with, some releases. Andrew,
yes.
Who do we have this week?
Oh, thank you for handing it over to me, because I didn't even tell you that I want to do the intro this week. So we have someone coming on this week who is perhaps someone you've heard about, perhaps someone you haven't heard about, but you'll get to know a lot about them in this episode as we deep dive into their lives. And this is someone whom I've been a big fan of for many, many years through social media world, through all of her writing and all of her work and all of her discussions, producing, all of these things. We'll get into all of that. And that is the one and only Marya Gates.
Hi.
Hello.
That's quite an intro.
Yeah, you know what? I've been rehearsing it in my head this whole week, and that was just a quarter of what I wanted to say, but I thought I would slim it down. But thank you for coming on and talking with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes. So yeah, we're both, me and Andrew. Any chance we get, we love pointing out that we're big fans of film noir. It's our kind of our favorite time of the year, and we wanted to make sure we got a guest on during this month that could really bring great insight into I guess you could say, people like to say genre, but I think it's more accurately a movement, a style. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's, I'm sort of the fan of there's an era, the original era, and then there is more of a tone or a style or an ethos that hits after that initial, because most of those films in that initial batch weren't really trying to do anything similar. Mm-hmm. They just are similar because of what they came out of.
Yeah, they almost didn't have a conscious sense of what they are. They just all happened to be out at the same time and dabbling in different overlapping styles and tones and characterizations and all of those things. And I mean, I think typically people associate the classic era of film noir being, would you say, Marya, 1940 to 1958? Is that
that's about what I usually say. Feels right.
That seems about right. Some like to make the arguments of late 1930s, certain things that kind of transition, 1930s gangster era to the
Yeah.
40s, but it's 1940. Seems like a good round number. I like doing things in even numbers. Um, but another reason why we're bringing you on, we've mentioned you actually in several occasions, unaware to you, of course. In our previous iteration of the show, which was called Cinema Discovery Project, we did a whole every November we would do like a noir themed episode or episodes. You know, we would either go over a movie, or we talked about the whole classic era. Stephen, I think you remember that.
Yeah.
And I brought up because I remember this distinctly because I've been following you on social media now for probably a decade. It's been that long, and so I remember the whole Noirvember thing becoming its own entity, and then its origins actually start with you. So could you kind of, tell us about those origins?
Yeah, it's funny. It definitely has become its own thing. All these movie theaters and libraries and um uh record labels. Kino has a noir sale every year. They have for like the last 5 years. Um, but it started during the recession, as lots of projects did. And I was living in the back of my parents' house and I was trying to catch up on, I didn't really have a job. So I was just like, well, I'll use this time to like catch up on some blind spots. And this was back when I was still kind of using IMDb. There really wasn't like Letterboxd or really any other guides yet. And so IMDb had a top 50 noir list, and I had only seen like 4 movies on it. And at the time, quite a few of the like classic era noirs were on Netflix streaming. This was like the golden age when they had all that classic film on there. And so between that and TCM and a few discs that I still had the disc Netflix. I watched the rest, but I at the beginning of the month invited people to via Tumblr and Twitter and Facebook page, invited people to join me and watch these films with me and like do this challenge. And I believe 2 people did it with me. And by did it, I mean they watched 1 movie each with me, and that was about it that first year. Other than I guess my mom, I think she watched quite a few of them with me on the couch. But the next year, it started to take a bit more of a foothold, and people on Tumblr started doing it really. Um, and then libraries really were the first ones to go on there, because librarians obviously are always trying to find ways to like have a fancy table where it's like, check this stuff out. And so a few libraries really started doing events and like video nights, and then a couple of bars. And the next thing you know, it was like all these movie theaters, and the hashtag really took off on Twitter, and Letterboxd became more popular. And there's literally hundreds of Noirvember Letterboxd lists. I went through them a couple days ago just to see like what have people been watching. Lots of films apparently. And it's kind of nice to know that like, this thing that I started just to challenge myself has really become a thing that even if I like didn't exist anymore, that's bleak, but fitting for Noirvember, I guess.
Very fitting.
Yeah.
It would just keep happening. Like I feel like it's an established thing, like Criterion Channel for the last, I think, 3 years has programmed towards it. Which so many of the films that they have, like this year, they have all these Fox Noirs, and a lot of those, when I watched them like 10 years ago, I like tracked it down on a YouTube or archive.org, or like really crappy rips of the okay Fox Noir DVD set from, about 10 years ago. Like people would rip them and put it on YouTube or torrents. And now people could just like go on Criterion and watch like the dark corner. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, one of the, I would say, benefits of this whole kind of streaming revolution over the last decade or so is that if you do dig around and look around, you will find that a lot of the classic cinema, whether it be film noir or just other films from the golden age of Hollywood, have now made their way onto streaming platforms and streaming places, and they're much more available than they were 5 to 10 years ago. Because people now, I think, don't realize how hard it was to find a lot of these movies that are readily available now, just in physical media form. Really was even
Yeah,
tough.
the noir sets that I know Kino's been doing them for quite a while, but Indicator obviously in the last few years has really been doing a great great job. I think they're out of the UK, but they've been putting together these beautiful restored box sets, and there's just been more and more, like Warner Brothers has been doing theirs as the manufactured on demand VOD noir, so you can watch all those Warner Brothers films like
Yeah,
done beautifully, and it's just really nice to see that a lot of these films that were relegated to all of the manufactured on demand services, frankly, 10 years ago, have been getting proper Blu-rays because they see the value in it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do you think? Like people come up with like themes for months, and for any kind of thing, but like, what do you think it is about film noir that it just caught on, that people decided to keep pushing that thing that you started? Like, you could have started it and it could have happened amongst some people online, but then it could have just been a thing online that happens. But what do you think it is about film noir that has continued to let it rise to where it is now, where all these places that celebrate it now celebrate it as a whole, kind of a holiday for a whole month now? Why do you think film noir, has stuck around?
I think it's kind of a two-pronged thing. I think part of it is much like horror. There is so much of it, and there's so many different aspects to it. So if you prefer the femme fatales, there's tons. If you prefer cop noir, there's tons, what have you. But also, it's just no matter when it's done, whether it's the classic era or neo-noir or noir from France or noir from, South America or wherever, because it's this tone that is a little bit bleak, but very stylish, it's really alluring, and no matter what era it is. So I think a lot of it has to do with just the fact that it is, they are films that are just really cool, for lack of a better word. I also do think that Eddie Muller with the Film Noir Foundation, who's been doing the work for 25 years now, I think, like his festival sort of caught on right around the same time. His because he always had the LA San Francisco one, but he really started to branch out and has the Chicago one and DC and Detroit, and I don't even know where else now. I think he's got like 8 of them. I think that started to catch on at the same time, and then I think he's been on TCM for about 5 years now, and so the weekly little taste of noir that TCM fans get like becomes a whole month, right? And so I do think that part of it is like the two-prong, like I kept pushing this, all these other libraries kept pushing it, Eddie started making it on TV kind of cool, and that all just sort of boiled into it really being an era and a type of filmmaking that has captured people's fascination in a way that I think really only horror is the only other genre I can think of that people love in such a way.
Yeah, in a way,
maybe Christmas movies also.
Yeah, it's also true. Tradition.
Yeah.
In a way, like the themes of noir are kind of timeless. The gray characters, the detective stories, whether it be murder or infidelity or backstabbing or, trying to figure out some type of mystery. Those stories just, every generation keeps wanting them and wanting put them in new packages to deliver to us. So that's why I think this whole noir vibe or neo-noir vibe continues on through this day.
And to steal from Eddie one last time, he likes to call noir suffering with style. And I think we can all relate to suffering, but it's nice to see it done stylishly, you know?
It's nice to have kind of almost that mirror of our real lives.
Yeah, it still has it feels relatable to what we've been going through, but it's like slightly aspirational because my hair never looks as good as Ava Gardner's, so it's nice to see, nice to see her looking really great. All those suits and
Eddie. We had Eddie on back in the summertime, and he was
I think we had him back on
great.
June, July?
June-ish, yeah.
Because he was promoting actually one of the Flickr Alley releases that he worked on, along with his film, the Noir Foundation.
El Vampire Negro, that
one? He actually teased us about that.
Yeah.
But the one we had was Steve.
The Guilty and High Tide.
The Guilty and High Tide.
Oh yeah.
The double feature, which is kind of like a B noir double feature. But it was just it was great to see great to see those films, and we had him on. And for me personally, it was a high watermark in my existence.
He
Yeah,
dressed.
I-
He dressed up.
I
Mariah.
dressed up for him because in my wildest dreams, I never thought I would ever meet Eddie Muller. I've been a big fan for years, watching TCM and Noir Alley, and getting his books and stuff. I never thought I'd get to talk to him directly in any type of real life scenario, but he turned out to be, just a normal guy, just who loves movies, kind of like the rest of
yeah.
us.
Eddie's a really wonderful person.
Yeah, and that kind of transitions into, I guess, something else. Just kind of backtracking a little bit because you've worked at TCM for a little while.
I did, yeah. I worked there for 3 years, back when Filmstruck was still running. I was doing
Oh,
TCM
oh.
and Filmstruck.
When
Rest in
Filmstruck
peace.
died,
Rest in peace. Yeah.
my little piece
Yeah.
of my soul died. The last day of Filmstruck, I just kept watching it in the hopes that, like, if I just keep watching these movies, they won't turn it off on me. So I watched
Yeah.
it all night, and of course, it eventually, went off.
I think I
went off
have a
the air.
photo in my phone of like when the service ended, and I have a photo of like when it's like this isn't working anymore.
Yeah,
Just
I took,
look back at it and just.
I didn't take the app off of my Amazon Fire TV for like a year or two. Like, I don't think I took it off forever, just because as a memorial to it. That was something that unique of its time. And I know we have other things now, Criterion Channel, as well as TCM On Demand has revamped their entire interface and whatnot. But it's nothing like Filmstruck. Filmstruck was like lightning in a bottle. And I know
Yeah.
that you were very much part of that.
Yeah, I did the social media and quite a bit of the marketing and some of the publicity. It was and sometimes some of the programming I pushed for the female directors
Right.
thing that they managed to launch literally the month that we got canned. So that sucked. It was hosted, each one was hosted by Alicia. It was really wonderful. But Criterion Channel really picked up that mantle and not only specifically highlight female directed films every Wednesday, but they add at least a third of their films every month that they add to that channel are female directed. And I do think that by getting that on Filmstruck, that was something they saw value in and kept doing. So I am very proud of that.
Yeah, right from the gate, one of the categories or collections was women filmmakers.
Yeah.
Right on the launch date, they had Columbia Noir and like women filmmakers were like they were one of their first two.
That
big
was how they started.
collections.
Yeah, I was like, I feel it. This
Yeah,
feels like
and
me.
I knew that
It's
was
like
very
my
much
two
inspired
sides.
by you. I knew it was very much inspired by you and your work because you've been a massive advocate for women in film for as long as I've been following you, and in a way, you've inspired kind of this rejuvenation or kind of revolution of learning about women in film and their impact, and to the point where I think people are going back and realizing that women have always been an integral part of the history of film. They've just been unfortunately relegated for a good portion of it, and now we're finally starting to realize how important they've been to it all.
Just earlier today, I was watching Ulrike Ottinger's films because they're about to expire on the channel. And she made films at the same time as Fassbinder and Wim Wenders. And obviously, they are very well known. And all of their films have been readily available in the United States for quite a while on Criterion and other labels, right? But Ulrike's films have been very hard to find. And if they were available, they were in really bad transfers. And these are beautiful, beautiful transfers. And it's kind of wonderful to see those films be unearthed finally and be available and highlighted in the same way that her male counterparts always were.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's that's oftentimes I find that oftentimes that happens where there are women working at the same time as the male directors, and we just don't see their movies because they don't get the same publicity, they don't get the same marketing, they don't get the same availability in terms of like, is this even on a disc somewhere? Is this just streamed somewhere?
And then the historians, were more often than not the ones writing books were men, and so they, hilariously, one of the I think it's coming in December, but maybe January. Criterion's putting out the Mai Zetterling collection. She was a Swedish filmmaker, I believe, and she was somebody whose films I was trying to get Filmstruck to track down and program because they were unavailable and I really wanted to watch them. And that didn't happen, obviously, while Filmstruck existed. But now that Criterion's tracked them down, I'm like, finally. Because I've seen one of her films, but she made several. And so now there's this collection. And I'm excited for like everyone to get to see them, plus get to see the two that I was not able to track down.
Yeah, and even before the show, we were talking about Doris Wishman, who was, I'll be honest, it was a director I knew nothing about until ABBA put out their the first box set of her films. And she was one making films in the 60s and 70s, which is a time that, many of us glorify as some of our favorite periods of filmmaking. And I just, didn't know about her work. And her work at the time is so unique, so underground, and so bold considering the cultural aspect of that time, and the fact that nudity is still a hot button issue when it comes to American cinema. But she was doing these films in the 60s and 70s without giving a damn, for the lack of a better phrasing.
Yeah, and I've only seen one. I've seen one from her golden era, and I saw one horror movie she made several years later that's not that great, and I think got taken away from her. But the one that I saw was called Bad Girls Go to Hell, and what I liked about it was that it it has the nudity, and it is technically, I guess, softcore erotica or whatever, but it doesn't it's never objectifying. You can tell that was a woman filming this and she was respectful, but wanted tits in her movie. I think that I wish we had more of that, because that era in like Hollywood, when they were first starting to have female nudity, a lot of it is very leery and exploitative and kind of makes you feel gross. Or they would add rape. I remember one of my early jobs at Warner Brothers, I was typing in metadata for Warner Archive streaming, I think. And they would have all these like notes and things, and we didn't add the metadata for the notes, but you could see the studio notes. And one of the films that we were adding, the studio note was like, needs more sex, add a rape. And I was like, what?
Whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why there were so many rapes in the 60s and late 60s, 70s cinema, is like that's studios were like, let's add that. And I
Yeah,
was like, what?
it's
Whereas Wishman, she had just had like healthy presentations of like female sexuality.
oh yeah, some of her films are very, kind of pro women, in the sense like women are utilizing their sexuality in order to get things over on terrible men. They're utilizing what we view as like we're supposed to be objectifying these women, but no, they're gonna turn the tables and
Yeah.
lure these terrible men in and get them give them what they think they want, but no, not really. We know how to get them.
Yeah,
Am I thinking of like Double Agent 73?
yeah, Double Agent 73 and Deadly Weapons, I think, are the two
Deadly
we both.
Weapons is the one
Yeah.
where she goes on kind of like a revenge tour, and it just kind of trying to find. Uh, I think it was like her husband or boyfriend was like murdered in a hit job, and she's trying to like figure it out, and she's just trying to like climbing her way to the inevitable person who called the hit out. What I love about her movies is they're like 70 to 75 minutes long. They're exactly to the point, exactly what they are. They're unapologetic. I mean, they're just great encapsulations of the time in which they came out. I compare them a lot to John Waters' works. I go to John Waters a lot on the
He does.
podcast, Mariah, like all the time, and because I'm just a big fan of him, and I always bring up like his seminal work of the late '60s and '70s, that the Midnight Movie, the I don't give a damn type movie, and there were a lot of other people doing that at that time, and he took a lot of influences from people who had done it before him. He just is more well known because of who he is, the personality and whatnot. But yeah, Doris Wishman's work is just fantastic. I'm glad we're getting to see it now in good quality.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
I am excited to go through those sets. I've been buying them as they've released, and that it's like my December is going to be like Doris Wishman December or something.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
She's going to start a new one, guys.
Yeah,
Doris Wishman December.
like Wishman Christmas or something like that, or Wishman holidays. Have a very Wishman holidays.
Yeah.
But kind of getting into kind of what you just talked about, I know you've had many many careers, jobs, different things that you've done throughout the movie industry. You just mentioned you worked at Warner Archive for a little while. I think that was wasn't that back in like the DVD on demand days?
Yeah, it was before I think they had just done 2 Blu-rays and were like testing the waters. They put out what was it? That was one of the ones with Christopher Reeve.
Was it the
Time
Death
one?
Trap? Death Trap?
Death Trap. Yes,
Oh.
it was Death Trap, and then there was, I want to say, Victor Victoria. I think those were the first 2, or it was Gypsy, something like that.
Oh yeah,
Those were
put
like
out-
the first 2, and they were testing like 1 or 2 a year for the first couple of years just
They
to see if
were?
people would buy them. Yeah.
and then it kind of caught fire, and they put out amazing, beautiful Blu-rays. Now, some of the best you'll see of classic cinema. They've taken a few hits over the last couple of years in terms of what things are going on with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers keeps changing, different companies, different structures every couple of years now. That seems to be their thing. So we never know
Yeah.
if Warner Archive's going to survive all of this. As we know, with coincidentally, we talked about Filmstruck. That was one of the casualties of when AT&T and Warner Brothers merged. Was Filmstruck, and then we didn't know what was going to happen with TCM. It's a lot of things that go on in the corporate world that impact us here on the lower rung of things. But we, Stephen, who did we have on that?
Matt Patterson.
Matt, who worked at Warner Archive.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
glad you know the names.
he was my boss.
Oh,
he is-
gee, small
he
world.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I can't tell.
Yeah, he's a fun guy.
He's a crazy dude. He's crazy.
Yeah, he's got one of those personalities that once you've met Matt, you will never forget Matt.
Yeah.
No, he did the Warner Archive podcast. He was on that. We talked a lot about that. We talked a lot about Warner Brothers, push to streaming over the last few years, and how that kind of undid a lot of physical, media stuff. With Warner Archive and whatnot. I mean, they're still around. I mean, they still have plans to release a lot of releases next year. But I just keep telling people to keep buying Warner Archive releases because maybe that'll help. And also, they keep putting out good stuff. I just got their Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the 1931 film with Frederick
Oh
March.
yeah,
It
yeah,
looks
I need to get
amazing.
that.
Yeah, it looks phenomenal. That, of course, I wanted them to last long enough just to put out all the Thin Man movies. I was like,
Yes.
got to get to that 6th Thin
Yeah,
Man movie.
God, yeah.
And we got to there, and I'm like, oh, good.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
good now.
But Mariah, so we know you're a big noir fan, but where were before noir became a big part of your life, was there other types of films that were special to you growing up?
Oh, I think I've kind of always just been a bit of a generalist.
Hmm.
Because when I grew up, I was like a video store kid. At the height of the video store era, even though my hometown only has like 2,500 people, we had like 4 or 5 quote unquote video stores. Some of them had 50 videos, But my dad would take me around every Saturday and we'd go to all the different video stores because he was usually trying to actually find something, and I would just like pick up random stuff. And eventually it whittled down to one video store, that Top Hat Video, that survived all the way through high school, so the mid 2000s. And I used to rent, in the summertime, I would rent 5 movies for 5 days for $5, like VHSs. And then I could get 2 DVDs for $4, I think, something like that, on the weekend. And so then I spent about $10 a week basically renting like everything. I would, sometimes I went down an Ewan McGregor rabbit hole after Moulin Rouge, and I rented everything that they owned, which was not all of his films, but quite a few. I rented a lot of Nicole Kidman. It's how I saw Malice. And what's that one with Michael Keaton where he's a gangster? I don't remember the name of it. Michael Keaton's a gangster in one of them.
Dang, I should know that. I love Michael Keaton.
I know.
What is that movie called?
Yeah, it's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think
should
Michael Keaton,
probably-
early Michael Keaton. I think Multiplicity.
No.
it's
No, I actually no. He's the one that's in. He's in a different one. He's not a gangster. I'm
Oh,
confusing Nicole Kidman movies now.
no, that's
Okay.
okay.
There's
Many of us
one
do.
where she's dating a gangster, and there's one where she's married to Michael Keaton. They are different movies. Um,
Excuse me while I go to IMDb and look at
but
all
I
of Nicole
rented them
Kidman's
like
work.
at the same time. So like I would go get obsessed with a writer or director or an actor and just go to the video store and get whatever they had.
That's the
So,
best way. That's the
but I
best
will
way.
say that as a very young kid, the movie I rented the most was Ernest Scared Stupid, to the point that my mom um told me that I could no longer rent it.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. So
That's
Should
a
have just been like, you should. So
classic.
can we buy it? No,
I
I'm
know.
Yeah.
What we didn't have, this was like before you could buy stuff on the internet, really, and we didn't have a store that sold videos at all, or because nothing, like my hometown didn't really have anything like that, so that's why I rented it so many
Yeah.
times.
I don't think a lot of people realize that there was a time before internet buying. Amazon didn't exist till what, 2004 or so? Maybe a
No, it
little earlier?
existed in the late 90s because my mom was
Yeah.
one of the first ones to buy books
I was
on
gonna say
it.
they were a bookstore to start with. I
Yeah.
remember that. I
I still have a
remember.
magnet from, I think, 1998 maybe.
Oh wow.
Because they used to, if you bought over a certain amount, they would send you a Christmas thing every year. And my mom got like a t-shirt and a magnet and a mug or something. The only thing that we kept is this magnet because I kept it.
Nice. I
So,
remember when Amazon and Borders merged, and you could buy like they could buy like Borders stuff on Amazon and whatnot.
yeah.
And then Borders eventually went under, and now we're left with
Barnes
other
and Noble.
things. Barnes and Noble, I guess,
Yeah.
and Amazon kind of own the book buying world. Unless, of course, you go to like small local bookstores or even online. There's a lot of bookstores that have websites that you can buy from and whatnot. But I'm just saying, in terms of like big corporations and whatnot, it was a different time back then. Um, yeah, I can. Yeah, there was a time before internet buying. That's when you had to really go to like video stores and whatnot. I know we had some local video stores like Suncoast Video was
Yeah.
one. Um, but yeah, I know that.
SYE.
We didn't have any, like none of these were chains. These were
Mm,
all like people, like one of them was inside the store where you bought stationery, and they were trying to be a video store for a while. And but my dad was always kind of a big film guy. So when we would go out of town to visit like a relative, I remember we went somewhere in LA to, I want to say it wasn't a Blockbuster, so it was one of the other chains, Hollywood Video maybe. And he went to the immediately to like this once they were selling, and he found Metropolis.
wow.
And so this was the before they found the pre-restoration. It was like a crappy, VHS Metropolis. But like that's how I saw Metropolis, was he found it in the like no one's renting this pile at some random video store in LA in like 1992.
I did find the Nicole Kidman film where Michael Keaton's in it. It's called My Life.
My life. Oh, the other one is called Billy Bathgate.
Ah,
Maybe it's Bruce Willis. Maybe he's the gangster.
I'll say it's the My Life has Michael Keaton, Nicole Kidman, Bradley Whitford, Queen Latifah.
Oh wow, I don't
Ah,
remember that. Let's see if Billy Bathgate. Let's see if is he the gangster?
yeah, and I know
Bruce
that.
Willis is the gangster. Okay.
uh, okay,
I was close. Tom Stoppard wrote Billy Bathgate, apparently. Yeah.
nice. And I know that growing up, small town California area. I know that you also went to college in California as well, but you didn't. I don't believe did you study film or was it
No,
journalism?
I did comparative literature and French
That's right.
literature. So I'm a bit of a book nerd as well.
Yes, that's another thing. I mean, you just opened up the doorway, so I'm gonna go down it. You are a massive collector and reader of books. We
Yes.
talk about physical media here. That's physical media. That counts. um, you have a massive love of books. Could you talk about that? Does that even predate your love of movies?
I think it all happened around the same time. That I just, you grow up in the middle of nowhere, and it's kind of before the internet. So if you don't have anybody you really want to hang out with, like, what are you going to do? So you go to the library. So I went to the library a lot as a kid, and we had this Friends of the Library thing that was called the Bookworm, and they would sell books for like 50 cents. So that's how I started buying books, with like 50 cents. Or once a year they would have a big uh what do they call it? Parking lot sale, and they would just take everything out of the parking lot, and anything you could fit in a paper bag was $1.
Yeah,
I would find
Which
a
is
paper
dangerous.
bag.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
I'd find
dangerous.
the biggest one I could find.
Yeah,
I taped
there's
two bags
something-
together.
Yeah, there's something comforting about a library. Like we recently, we moved to this area where I'm living at now, maybe a year or so, almost 2 years ago, and we never really went to the library yet. So we went into town and went to the library and got a library card recently. And it's just something about being back in a library that's so comforting. Like, it's like being a person that considers himself probably more of an introvert, that likes some quiet time, going to a place where everybody needs to be quiet and like focus on the thing that they're there doing feels so comforting. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love
Okay.
libraries.
Very much so. I spent a lot of time in my youth in bookstores, libraries, places like that. I think books were kind of my first physical media love. I've spent hours just walking through Borders bookstores in the mid to late '90s, by myself, and just looking at tons and tons of books and whatnot. And it was always a comfort for me just to browse. Sometimes it's just something nice about browsing, as opposed to buying, which I think is kind of a lost thing now that kind of internet shopping has really taken over our lives in a grand way. You don't get quite that same feeling. You don't get quite that same rush, I guess.
There's the adventure's a little bit gone, a little bit.
Yeah.
It very much is. In terms of other physical media things, I know that you're a massive vinyl collector as well.
Yes.
Yeah, like I've seen your book and vinyl collection, and people, when I tell you it's quite massive, it is quite massive. There were various times, throughout your various moves and whatnot, where you have to pack things up and then unload things and put things on shelves, where you just have everything out, and it's just like entire rooms, floors covered in books and vinyls and stuff. So where did your love of like vinyl collecting come in? Because that's kind of a retro thing that's come back in a big bad way.
Yeah, that started with like my parents are the like boomer generation, so they had a massive record collection, and that's what I grew up listening to. Like, they didn't really, I think Hannah had a cassette player, but they didn't really have very many cassettes. My mom had like Michael Bolton and Meatloaf, and that was about it. So, I listened to vinyl until I think we got a CD player. My uncle bought us a CD player when I was like 13 or 14. So it was pretty much vinyl what I grew up with. So it was just natural. And then when I went to college and I discovered the wild world of used DVDs, used bookstores, and used vinyl, that was dangerous. Because you could get, like there was one in Berkeley where you could get, if you bought 4 for $1, the 5th one was free for vinyl. So like that's dangerous. And then obviously eventually I just stole everything from my parents that they didn't want, which was most of their records. So it sort of started as stealing my parents' records and then slowly went from there. But when I first started buying on my own, it hadn't gotten really very popular yet. So you could still get really good stuff for $1, or like I got that huge Bruce Springsteen 80s box set for I think $10, and I always check to see how much it costs in stores now, and it's always minimum 20 to 25, and I was like, this was $10
I
back in
know.
the day.
And yeah, records now can be very expensive because they're repressing them like all the time, putting them out, and like it's like, oh, new remastered, it's new, new type of vinyl, thicker vinyl now, and they always put them in like these fancy new packages, and then they charge $45 to $50 for them, and it's
Yeah.
like it's the same music that was put on record, however many years ago, but. Yeah, vinyl records have come back in a big bad way. I think like CDs are making a comeback, or cassettes are making a comeback.
Cassettes are coming back. Everyone's releasing cassettes, and I'm like, those sounded bad to begin with.
Yeah,
and
that's like
and they-
analog stuff.
they
Like,
break
yeah, they
so
do, and
easily.
they if you, I don't know if radios used to chew them up and stuff
Yeah.
and just ruin them. Then you had to rewind them like with a pen or a
With a
pencil.
pencil, yeah.
And then of course, like
Kids don't
if you wanted
know.
to go to a particular song, if you didn't have a fancy enough radio, you had to like fast forward enough to where you get to it, and if you skip past it, you gotta go back. Yeah, cassettes were a mess. I grew up with
Well,
them as a kid. You know,
the only thing that's cool about cassettes is that you could make mixtapes easy.
Yes.
That was fun.
well then we could like make well then our generation, because I think we're all kind of relatively the same age, but we used to be able to burn CDs off of our
Yeah.
computers. That was kind of our mixtapes in a way. There's a lot of young people coming up now with the newer generation that don't know what the concept of burning a CD is. And I was just like, I felt like I was just doing that the other day, but it was really 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. It used to be that we carried CD players around with us, like these.
Oh,
little,
yeah. In high school, everybody used to
Yeah.
carry around CD players because that was right before iPods became a thing. And now iPods are gone, ironically
Yeah.
so. The iPod Shuffle was just coming out, I think, my junior or senior year of high school. And then, like, the regular iPod, oh, this can hold 1,000 songs, and the people were losing their minds. And then now 1,000 songs is nothing when our computers or we have endless streaming on
Yeah.
Spotify, Pandora, wherever. It's amazing, kind of the evolution of physical media, turning digital, but still having its foot in the physical media world, and it's not relinquishing. When it comes to movies, when it comes to music, or any other type of entertainment, it still has a physical media presence in some way, shape, or form, no matter how digital it gets.
Yeah. And, speaking of books, you definitely have done some writing for some books and are
Oh,
I
good
believe,
transitions,
working on a book as well, right?
Yeah, I'm working on it's a book of profiles of female directors through interviews. So one of the films that I sent to you that I was sort of an underseen noir is because I'm going to be interviewing that director next week, and it's her film is really beautiful and strange and weird and perfect kind of neo-noir. But it's hopefully going to be about 25 profiles. So I have to interview 25 women, and some of them are ones that I've interviewed before, and I'm hoping to like re-interview them, but I have to go through the whole process of like tracking them down again. So it's going to be a bit, but that manuscript is due at the end of next year. So hopefully, I'll have a nice selection of directors by then.
Great.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah, can't wait to read it. Guess kind of staying on the book thing. I know you've been published in. Didn't you write a book? Sorry, my brain's all over the place. Did you write a book about Lou Ayres several years ago?
Yeah, I wrote the foreword. So
Oh, okay.
this Leslie Coffin wrote the biography, and then they had me write the foreword, which was really fun. It was the sort of the first time I was in like a physical print like that, and but it was for this, Lou Ayres is not the most well known, so really the only person in my life at the time who really understood who he was my grandfather. So I gave him a copy of the book because he
nice.
actually knew who Lou Ayres was.
Is that book still be able to be tracked down, or is it out of print?
Yeah, it was the University of Mississippi Press, I think.
Okay.
So it should still be in print. And every once in a while, I see it in film bookstores.
Oh,
like
that's cool.
you like used
That must be surreal.
copies, so that's always kind of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a really surreal experience.
It's fun because they didn't tell me they were going to put my name on the cover when like they sent like the original art when they were like, hey, here's the date, and the art didn't have my name on the cover, but then when they sent me my copy, my name was on the cover, and I was like, whoa. So
yeah,
that was very surreal.
That's a hell of an accomplishment. I just think just to like see your work out there, and then like other people are going to see this, like wow. I mean, I know you're used to like your online publications with movie reviews and being a critic and things like that, but I guess maybe seeing something in a book in print in a store is like maybe a different type of feeling.
It very much is, yeah. It's definitely nothing like it.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And there's one more book related question I have. I can't remember if this is still true, or did I I dreamed this up at some point. Were you working on a book about Joseph Cotton at one point?
Yeah, I am still.
Okay.
That's a biography, so it's a lot of research.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when I lived in LA this last time, I was hoping to do more research because his papers are at USC, but the first 9 months I was working like way too much because I was working at Netflix, and then the pandemic happened and all the libraries were closed, and so that got completely shot. But now I'm closer to the Lilly Library, which is where all of Orson Welles' papers are. So at least I can hopefully soon get that half the
Yeah,
research done.
you mentioned the magic word. I'm an Orson Welles fanatic. So once you mention Orson Welles, my blood pressure goes up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
part of my fandom and love for Orson Welles is because of you and your appreciation of him and his work, and Joseph Cotton as well. Become a big Joseph Cotton fan because of
He's
your
he's good.
advocacy
They're
for him.
showing a movie, I think today, maybe tomorrow. I found it on the schedule. TCM showing one of the few Joseph Cotton movies that I haven't seen today or tomorrow, so I'm gonna watch that next
Awesome.
week, I think. Yeah, it's one of his
Awesome.
later films.
Yeah, I've seen some of his later work recently, and he's just in the movies for like a short amount of time. Like
Yeah,
he's in. I think he's in The Abominable Dr. Phibes
he is.
with
Yes,
Vincent Price, which I watched I think for the first time last year, and he's in there as one of the guys that I think Vincent Price trying to get revenge on.
he did a lot of those later films in the 60s and 70s that are, not the best. A lot of genre stuff because they paid really well. And he and his wife, whose name has just escaped me, were doing a lot of theater at the time, and that's how they paid for Patricia Medina. That is her name.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they paid for their theater work that they were doing, was by Joe doing, really well paid small roles in genre films and like films made in Italy and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's no big secret now that a lot of the actors and actresses that we know from the golden age of Hollywood, by the times the later part of their career came about, the movie industry kind of moves past you. Once they use you, they kind of move past you. I remember we talked about. Oh, didn't we talk about a movie called Lady in a Cage with Olivia de Havilland?
Oh, that's
As
a crazy movie.
TV movie
Yeah.
from like, what was it, late 60s? Where she's in a cage, for most of the movie. And she's just kind of, it's just wild stuff. So, it's nice to see, him still getting work later on, but it's also like, it's sad to see a lot of these people be relegated to like certain things. I mean, a lot of them, unfortunately, their careers kind of peter out, and it's fascinating to see a lot of these prominent figures where their careers start and end. We did a whole episode at Cinema Discovery Project on directors' like last films, like where did they like what was their final work, and a lot of them didn't do their best work later on,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Like John Cassavetes' last film was just like this kind of spoof 80s like gangster film. And it was just fascinating.
Some guys, somebody like a Sidney Lumet did like, one of the best last movies, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead.
Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. That's a great film.
With Ethan Hawke, whom I mean,
Philip Seymour
you're a
Hoffman.
big fan. You're a big fan of Mariah, and you've got to interview him and meet him a few times.
Wait, who?
Ethan Hawke.
Oh, yes. I met him once randomly in a hotel lobby of all things. But I was wearing a Winona Ryder shirt at the time. I had one of those free Winona shirts. I forgot I was wearing it. He gave me a high five because of the shirt. I was like, damn. And then I did interview him for The Last Movie Stars earlier this year. And I only got 12 minutes, and I really wish I had gotten like more time because he's such a good like interview. He's very like he just has a lot to say about everything he does. Everything he does with care, whether it's a performance or writing or what
I was going to say he seems like a very thoughtful,
always thinking. Yeah,
he's a very intellectual person. I mean, he's written books, I believe
he's
poetry
written
books.
4 or 5 books. And
And he's doing directing more now. He's getting
Yeah.
into that. I love
Yeah.
the film he did about the was it Blaze?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think he's made 4 films now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love that his career has always stayed relatively in the indie film world. I think he's dabbled in larger films, but he's never risen to like the level of, let's say, a Brad Pitt, a Tom Cruise. Do you know what I mean? He's like, I'm pretty sure he's had opportunities too, but I think he's felt more comfortable in that indie film world. Yeah, he's kind of one of my favorites. I mean, the Before trilogy is very near and dear to my heart, so that kind of gives him a lifetime pass for me in terms of my fandom. So, but yeah, I always love delving into his work.
Yeah. But of course, one of the reasons why we're here is to get really deep into some noir talk.
Which we dabbled in a little bit already.
Of
Yeah.
course. But
we have an expert on. We might as well have her
go
teach
even
us
deeper.
everything.
Yeah,
go even
please.
deeper.
So we're gonna spend this episode. I'm deciding I'm going ahead and making the call. We're gonna skip announcements this week because we don't have a lot to talk about anyway, and we can just catch up next week. And I just really want to keep talking about Mariah's work and talking about the main thing, which is noir here.
I don't mind. Yeah,
it's
I don't mind that
Noirvember.
at all.
Yeah,
It
this is noir.
Noirvember. It's a celebration.
Yeah,
It's a party
celebration.
time.
Make it all about that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just discuss a bunch of different kind of what we consider to be some underseen noir films. So not the ones that you hear about all the time. Not the Casablancas and the Citizen Kanes and but the little bit the B level, more of the B level stuff. So Mariah, please start off by presenting one that you would like to talk about first.
Yeah, the ones that I picked are all, I wanted to make sure they were available readily on Blu-ray. So if people, or well, I think one of them is only on DVD, but people can buy these if they want to like own them. As opposed to, I've seen quite a few where I've watched them through DB's means, and I did not want to go. I didn't want to go on record.
I hear you. Sometimes you just got to break the rules for cinema.
Yeah. So this first one's one I watched a couple years ago, I think maybe 2 years ago, called Nocturne, and it's from 1946, and it stars George Raft and Lynn Barry. And what's also interesting is that it is produced by Joan Harrison, who at the time was one of the few female producers working in the Hollywood system. She worked very closely with Hitchcock and several other filmmakers at the time. This film's set in LA, and it has, obviously, Nocturne is music, so it has this beautiful opening sequence with a man on a piano and someone's gonna die, and George Raft is going around talking to all these women trying to figure out who killed the guy. And what's kind of funny to me is that, and everyone on Letterboxd was like, said this as like a diss of the movie, but I think it's kind of charming in that every single woman wants to like bone George Raft because he's not exactly the most attractive man. So it's kind of like maybe Joan Harrison thought he was cute. I don't know. But he plays it well, and he's very flirty back, and all the women like sass him, and there's some really great lines. I think at one point he gets punched in the face or something and falls in the pool. It's one of those noirs that has really good patter, really good, dialogue, beautiful mid-century LA cinematography. You don't really see George Raft in a quasi-romantic lead role like this that often, and Lynn Barry's sort of one of those film actresses that is usually like the second or third billed female lead, and here she gets to be the female lead. So it's one I just really like the vibe of it, and I do believe it is on Blu-ray.
Yeah, it's...
Or maybe this is the one, no, this might be the one that's just on DVD, but the DVD print looks nice, so.
Yeah. Oh, I think, is it a Warner Archive?
Yeah, I think it's a Warner Archive. I think I rented it from their YouTube.
Yeah, so hopefully maybe they'll upgrade it here at some point soon. But that's the one thing about noir and discovering, like, some lesser known noirs is a lot of times, at least with the ones I'm going to present, some of them can be more into that kind of like entrenched in that kind of like, what the typical film noir where it's kind of like crime. You get that certain vibe, but then you got other kind of more fringe noirs that are a little bit more have a little bit different flavor, that are not just trying to drench you in shadows, but are
Yeah, this one's got a mix of that and like that sunshine noir that you would see later in the 70s, because there's a lot of scenes in LA, so he's going to pools and what's interesting with LA noirs is you usually get just LA at night with the bright lights, and maybe you'll go into Bunker Hill and the Angel's Flight area and get that decrepit part. This one really, because it's a rich composer that was killed, he's really going to like movie sets and the glamorous part of Hollywood, but he's a detective and it's dark, and I don't think I've seen it listed as an inspiration for LA Confidential, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was one that they looked at because of the Hollywood side of it being a movie about Hollywood and a noir at the same time.
Yeah, you bring up my favorite movie of all time.
That's Steven's favorite movie.
Greatest movie.
LA Confidential is my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, we've bemoaned many a times that the Blu-ray releases from like over a decade ago, and they've just kind of turned out the same Blu-ray in different packaging every couple of years. It's like, come on, give this like a new remaster, give it something, because it's getting past the points of anniversaries, and it's like, when are you gonna do it? When are you gonna do it?
Yeah, this was the 25th this year, so that's
they missed out.
a bummer.
Well, but speaking of LA noirs, I give you one that kind of coincides with that a little bit. A film called Murder by Contract.
Yes.
Nice.
And it's directed by Irving Lerner, and it's got a different vibe. Like I was saying, some of more. It's not like a straight up noir. It's got definitely a different vibe, especially with the music. The music has got this weird like electric guitar kind of thing going for it, and it's also got a lot of humor in it. It's kind of got this casualness about you're following this hitman, and he goes to LA to take out a subject, and he likes to keep it minimal. He doesn't like to carry a gun. He likes to keep it very low key, and then he doesn't really like to know much about who his target is until like the last minute, and then he finds out that his target is a woman, and it kind of changes everything. And it's a very interesting and cool movie. I really love it.
Yeah,
and,
this is one of my favorites as well. It has, like you said, really interesting score, really unique kind of leading man, sort of an anti-hero in the sense that you would see later. Like Le Samurai or some of the Scorsese anti-heroes. It's an interesting film.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, as you'll hear from a lot of my picks, a lot of these have been things that Indicator have been putting out through their box sets.
Steven went through the Columbia Noir box sets.
That good ones. There's a few fringe, other ones that are outside of them sets that I'm pulling from here. But Andrew, what's one you got for us?
This one is one I actually saw a few years ago on Noir Alley, and I loved it so much that I showed a friend it like the next day. I was like, you got to see this movie. And it's Johnny Eager from 1941.
Yes.
I love this movie.
It's so good.
It's directed by Mervyn LeRoy, starring Robert Taylor, Lana Turner, Van Heflin. Van Heflin won an Oscar for this film, I think, for Best Supporting Actor. And in the whole time, he's just like this, inebriated, like wise man, like divvying out like philosophical nuances about Robert Taylor's situation, and his situation is a difficult one. So just the general premise of this is the stepdaughter of a district attorney falls in love with a gangster on parole, who's portrayed by Johnny Eager, who her father originally imprisoned. So you get this drama already in there. And Johnny Eager is trying not to fall back into that life, but sometimes you just you can't do it. And him and Lana Taylor's chemistry and back and forth, and just this chemistry they have is just incredible. I love this movie. It's so dark and melancholy, which I think you got to have some melancholy in your noir. The sad part about this for me is that Johnny Eager's just not available on Blu-ray anywhere. It's
Yeah,
another Warner Archive. Come on, do me a solid and put it out. It does have a Warner Archive DVD that came out in 2009, so I do have hope.
that's how I first saw it was the Warner Archive disc. Um, Also hilariously, the parole officer in it is played by Henry O'Neill, who was an actor I was not aware of until he ended up on my most watched list on Letterboxd. He is my number two most watched below Joan Crawford, and I was like, what? Like when he showed up on the list, I was like, I don't know who you are. How have I seen so many of your movies? And
He
then I
just
looked,
happens to be in
he
all of
was
them.
in like every Warner Brothers film in the 40s and 50s. It's like,
It's kind of like how you brought up George Raft. If you look at George Raft's filmography, and you look like his 30s work, he's in like two or three movies every year throughout the whole
yeah.
decade and into the 40s. He's even in Some Like It Hot in a small role, which is basically just an
Henry
homage.
O'Neill is in like nine movies a year
That's
because
incredible.
he would play judges and dads and in this case a parole officer for like two scenes per movie.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
he has 178 credits, and his last credit, well, his last role is uncredited, is in North by Northwest
Yeah.
as Man in Plaza Bar.
That sounds right.
That's incredible.
All
But
right.
Johnny Eager is my pick. It's a film that I wish more people would talk about, and I wish it was more readily available. I did actually get into a lot of Lana Turner's work once again because of Mariah Gates. Because when TCM has their Summer Under the Stars every August, and I think they did Lana Turner one day, one time, and I just
Yeah.
did a whole bunch of Lana Turner watching, like and just she's a great actress, just incredible.
She's fantastic. She really is not considered one of the greats. I think she's considered like a iconic movie star, but I don't think she's considered a great actress. And I do think she's both.
Yeah, she was
Um,
in, I mean, film noir in general. She was in The Postman Always Rings Twice,
so good
which is
in
a
that.
classic noir. She's in Douglas Sirk film Imitation of Life. I remember she was in a lot of melodramas in the 50s. Peyton
Hmm.
Place was another one. Um, yeah, she was in a lot of those types of like over the top melodramas of the 50s, Technicolor stuff, which is great. I love the Douglas Sirk stuff. I just watched a Douglas Sirk film noir the other day called Thunder on the Hill. Completely
Oh,
different than any other Douglas Sirk film I've ever seen.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It,
He also did a noir, I think, with Lucille Ball, right?
did he do? Hold on,
I feel like he did one with her as well, but I don't remember the name of it.
oh gee. I was just looking at Douglas Sirk. He's got a lot of.
He's got a lot of movies.
Yes, he does. But he's mostly known for his like the Imitation of Life uh, and All I Desire, those types of films. The Thunder on the Hill is actually in the second Kino film noir box set. It's like the first film in that set, and that was where I watched it. Um, if anyone's interested in getting those sets, because there's like 12 to 15 of them now. There's so many of them. We just can't get enough film noir. Uh,
Oh, the one with Lucille Ball is called Lured.
oh,
It
I
also has Boris Karloff in it.
oh okay.
Yeah.
Gee, they've been putting out a lot of Boris Karloff recently too. Everywhere has been like Boris Karloff box sets. A lot of his Universal horror stuff's been coming out. I didn't realize how big of a star he was at that time in the post Frankenstein world until I started
Yeah.
watching all of these movies and like, yeah, they really pushed him into all of these horror film roles. To really be like their guy.
But Mariah, what is another noir, unseen noir you want us to talk about?
Well, one thing I love about Noirvember every year is that a new group of people discover Elizabeth Scott. Elizabeth Scott was in probably a dozen noir. I think the one a lot of people really fall for is either The Strange Love of Martha Evers or Too Late for Tears, both of which are fantastic. But one that I really love that isn't seen that much is called Pitfall. It's from 1948. It's Andre de Toth. It's got Dick Powell, who was in tons of noir. Raymond Burr's in it, and it's one of those films that you watch it and you're like, how'd they get away with this? And then you read and you're like, oh, they almost didn't get away with it because they like got in trouble with the Hays Code for being a little too salacious. And it's just a really, really like salacious is the right word. It's a salacious noir. Elizabeth Scott being the um femme fatale again, and it's just a wonderful film.
Yeah, it's not one I've seen.
It's about adultery. It's got cops and adultery, and that's why it's salacious.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really want to spoil it because it has a lot of twists.
Yeah, and I know Andrew said he had seen it.
I have seen Pitfall, and it's something that I've been wanting to get for several years. Yeah, Dick Powell, Elizabeth Scott. Dick Powell, I think, was he contracted at like 20th Century Fox for like the longest time? I think back in the day.
I think he was at MGM. He was a Hoofer. Yeah, he was in like all the musicals.
Oh yes, yes. Yeah, I have seen Pitfall. It's very, very good, and I think isn't it available through Kino?
I think it's on one of the Kino sets. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in either one of their sets, or you can buy it by itself. Either way, Kino has a deep, deep archive of stuff. It's kind of endless at this point.
Definitely.
But Steven, do you got something good?
Well, I got this one that I discovered last year, and it's from a filmmaker that I speaking of Kino, discovered through Kino, really, which was Ida Lupino.
Nice.
And her film Outrage.
Oh yes.
That Imprint put a Blu-ray out for last year. Yeah. And I believe somebody else is going to be putting it again, another Blu-ray out. I think Signal One might be putting it out next year in the UK. So you're going to get a UK Region B version too coming soon. But so yeah, this is a film directed by Ida Lupino. And speaking of kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't say it's, this was in a time, this is 1950, strict limitations, but a film that's about rape, is always kind of a tough subject. And of course that causes filmmakers to have to get creative. And I think one of the most suspenseful and thrilling just tough scenes to watch is this scene near the beginning of Outrage, where the lead character, played by Mala Powers, is being stalked and eventually raped by this man, and it sticks with you. That scene alone stuck with me for a long time, and then the rest of the film is about her psychological, her dealing with it psychologically, and how all the men around her are dealing with that, and not understanding what she's going through. And it's just great film, great performance. It's not like, once again, it's not necessarily kind of like the cliche noir type of film, but it has a lot of that style there and a lot of the elements, and it's just a great film. And
it was a big inspiration for Allison Anders, who's a filmmaker. It's one that I think helped her realize she could make films. I think she's spoken about this quite a bit, that she was sexually assaulted when she was younger, and this was a film that really helped her come to terms with that and realize that she could deal with that through art. So I'm glad that it finally got a Blu-ray and a beautiful release, and more people have seen it.
Yeah, Alexander Helen Nicholas has a commentary on this disc from Imprint, and I learned through that apparently Ida Lupino didn't love this movie. That she apparently thought it was a little bit too on the nose, like that. It wasn't, she much preferred her other works like The Hitchhikers, but I think sometimes tough subjects like this work better when you're a little bit more direct and not so trying to be use metaphors or use allegories, or I think sometimes when you just go right at the subject, it's actually more powerful. And I think that this is a great example of that. Yeah. But I know you've seen it, Andrew.
I have seen it. Yeah, it was one of the films that wasn't included in the Kino Ida Lupino box set. It was one that you kind of had to track down on your own, as well as a couple of her other films. So that set's not a complete set, but it does have, I think, yeah, it has 4 of her films. It's got Never Fear, The Hitchhiker, The Bigamist, and Not Wanted. Not Wanted is another psychological film dealing with,
And she
dealing with.
she initially wasn't going to make that movie. That was like after she like came on board later.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Ida Lupino. Just she breaking through that barrier at that time, which I think Mariah, you can say more about. Just there weren't very many women filmmakers in the golden age of cinema. Or even like
Yeah.
post golden age. There weren't a lot working within that studio system.
Yeah, I mean, the way that she did it was she broke out of the studio system. She was t didn't like the contract she was stuck with and the roles that she was given with her contract, but there was nothing in the contract that said she couldn't start her own production company and make her own films. And so her and her husband, that's what they did. And she mostly just directed them, and it was sort of a way for her to be creative outside of the sort of cage of the studio system. So really, I think you'll see with like a lot of the most interesting, maybe not all of them, but quite a few of the most interesting films from the studio era are films that were made outside the system or that were made on Poverty Row because they had to be interesting in order, you have less budget, so you have to stick with story has to be like center. And I think Lupino's kind of like who's the guy that did Detour? I just lost his name.
Is it Ulmer?
Yeah, Ulmer. He also mostly made films outside the system and like in Poverty Row, and they're stripped, like cinema stripped to the core of what is so great about storytelling. And I think I know Lupino didn't necessarily think she was trailblazing. I think she just was frustrated and blazed a trail accidentally, and that's kind of fabulous.
Yeah, I from what I learned about her, she of course she's an actress as well, and but didn't love being an actress. She much preferred doing something. She felt doing something more productive was better for her, and that's why the directing bug jumped on her. And of course she knew a bunch of great directors in the business that she could learn from, and so yeah, she's just a fascinating filmmaker, and just I love keep learning more and more about her. So, but Outrage is so far probably my favorite of her works that I've seen so far. But yeah, Andrew, what do you got for us next?
Oh yeah, I've got a film called Born to Kill, directed by Robert Wise, 1947, starring Claire Trevor, Lawrence Tierney, Walter Slezak. This is a kind of a darker film. I know Lawrence Tierney kind of just a sadistic dude on camera. He was apparently he was a very mean person in real life as well. Not somebody that got along with a lot of people. But yeah, this is a kind of darker, with that title, it's a darker film. The premise of the film, let me just read it off here just because it's easier. Helen Brent has just received a renal divorce. That night, she discovers her neighbor Laurie Palmer and a gentleman caller murdered in Palmer's home. The killer is her neighbor's other boyfriend, Sam Wilde, an insanely jealous man who won't abide anyone cutting in on him. So you get kind of this sadistic, jealous, loose cannon type person, and that person is portrayed by Lawrence Tierney, and it's just a dark film. Yeah, I very much enjoyed watching this film. Robert Wise, the same person who also directed West Side Story, directed this really dark, film noir from the 1940s. He also, of course, directed The Sound of Music as well. And then he would do some sci-fi in the 70s with the Andromeda Strain and Star Trek The Motion Picture. And also, trying to connect back to our earlier brief Orson Welles talk, he was the editor, I believe, on Citizen Kane, if memory serves.
And one other thing that's great about Noirvember is people get to spend a lot of time with Elisha Cook Jr., who is in Born to Kill, and this is probably one of his better roles, or at least definitely one of his better performances. He's not that he's bad, he's never bad, he's always good, but he's so good in this one. It's very twisted, and I believe in the book, I think Eddie said in his TCM when he presented this on TCM, in the book, his character is just gay. And in the movie, it's coded because obviously they
the Hays Code.
Yeah. But he gets to do a lot with that and with his relationship with Lawrence Tierney. And so it's a really fun film to see the way that they got things past the censors.
Yeah, it is unfortunately a movie that does not have a Blu-ray release and does have a DVD release from 2005, a long time ago. Still in print, though. You can still track it down if anyone's interested. But I think that this is probably one I watched either on the Criterion channel or maybe on TCM on demand or something like that. Because I don't have, obviously it's not available on disc. Yeah, I watched it in 2015. It had to have been either Filmstruck or TCM, one of the two at the time.
All right. Well, Mariah, what's another one you got for us?
Yeah, I was wondering, could we do one last round and then I actually have to
Sure.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, sure.
go after this. Okay. Well, the last one I wanted to talk about is a neo-noir from 1983. It's directed by Betty Gordon and has sort of was shot in and around I think Times Square in the late 80s, and it feels like a time capsule of a movie. And on there was an introduction to it that Gordon did for Criterion Channel, I think a year or two ago, where she spoke about how she had gone to film school in the Midwest and then she moved to New York and couldn't sleep, and she would just like walk around and see all the movie theaters. And this was back when there was like, they hadn't Disneyfied Times Square yet, and there were all these porn theaters. And she just loved how beautiful the neons were. And then she thought, like, what would it be like to work at this? Like, what if you were the person taking the tickets? And so from there, she worked with Kathy Acker, who was an experimental playwright at the time, to craft sort of a voyeuristic quasi murder mystery, sort of. It's one of those films where you're really never sure what's really happening because it's paranoia late at night, and
sounds like something Andrew's gonna love.
Probably.
Yeah, it's really wonderful, and it has really early performances from people like Will Patton and Louise Guzman, but then also photographer Nan Golden is in it. She actually took the iconic photo that is the poster and I think is on the Blu-ray. I think Kino maybe put it out, or somebody put it out recently. Cohen, one of the two of them, did a Blu-ray last year. And it's just one of those films where it's not quite erotica. We were talking about Doris Wishman. It's like kind of close to her kind of films, but then a little more noir, but it's kind of scuzzy because it's that era of New York where everything is a little scuzzy. But it's distinctly female. It very much never feels predatory. It never feels exploitative of all of the bodies that are on display, and it's just really fascinating time capsule of a movie. And it used to be you could only, I think Kino put out a DVD like in the early 2000s, and that used to be the only way you could watch it, or you could find a rip of it, and it was really like terrible print. But this Blu-ray that went out, I want to say a year or two ago, is gorgeous and really captures the darkness and the bright neon, and it's a really fun film. Well, fun maybe not the right term, but it's a gorgeous film and will make you think a lot about the nature of observing.
Yeah. Did I miss it? Did you say the name of the movie? Was it Variety?
Oh, it's Variety. I don't know if I said the name of the movie.
I was like, I know what she's talking about, but I don't know if she said it.
Variety is the name of the theater that she works at.
Yes. Yeah, I've never heard of this film, and it looks interesting. It really does, and it looks like it's around. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely check this one out. Definitely. Andrew, have you and Will Patton's another character actor I love. So seeing an early thing of his with him in it is always cool.
He's in everything. He's been around for a while. Yeah, this would be an early work for him. But yeah,
this might be Louise Guzman's debut, I think.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
But it's definitely one of his first like two. He's very good in it.
Mark Boone Jr. is in it too, who's I think most primarily known now for being in Sons of Anarchy. But
oh, gee.
Yeah.
I was just talking about Louis Guzman last night with a friend, by the way, just randomly, just because like we were just reminiscing about movies and how he's in, he's in like Paul Thomas Anderson films. Like that was kind of like the early part of his career, being in Punch Drunk Love and Boogie Nights and Magnolia. People mostly know him as like kind of a comedic actor, but no, he was in like kind of these heady dramas, at the time, and he was in Traffic, Steven Soderbergh's Traffic as well. Yeah, Will Patton is great. Just a great character. He shows up randomly in things, and I'm just so happy to see him. He was in that movie Minari, which came out a couple of years ago. As kind of this wayward, eccentric character that was just there, but he was just great on screen.
Yeah. But real quick, I know this is our last round, but I do want to go down the list of the other films that you did want to talk about, just to say what they are,
just to give people some homework to watch, I guess, for this film Noirvember.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, so you had 99 River Street was another one I know you were going to bring up. A Kiss Before Dying,
great title.
Is another one, and then the 1948 version. It's not the same movie of Roadhouse.
That's another Ida Lupino, like might be my favorite Ida Lupino performance.
Oh, okay.
In Roadhouse. Yeah.
I'm surprised I haven't watched it yet because I love the Patrick Swayze Roadhouse, and you'd think at some point I'd be like,
they're not the same.
I know they're not related, but I just know that my curiosity should have led me to watching that movie at some point.
Yeah.
Directed by Gene Negulesco, who directed How to Marry a Millionaire, as well as Humoresque, as well as Johnny Belinda. And you see his name pop up a few times if you've watched a lot of movies.
Yeah. But, and then the last one I see, Night Has a Thousand Eyes is another one.
Edward G. Robinson.
And then there was one called Kiss the Blood Off My Hands. I recommend that just because
how amazing is that title?
It's my favorite noir title. It's good. It's a good one with Burt Lancaster, but it's the best noir title.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
We love Burt Lancaster here. I'm so glad that his movies are starting to get even more releases on Blu-ray. What's the one that just came, a couple ones that just came out from Imprint, Steven? The Rose Tattoo, and then was it Goodbye Little Sheba?
Yeah.
Oh, and the Rainmaker came out as well with Katharine Hepburn.
Yes, I love Katharine Hepburn. Oh, she's one of my favorites.
Definitely. Big Bird Lancaster fans here. But all right, so I'll run through a few and then I'll highlight one last one. The Narrow Margins from 52 is one that I really like. I love films that are all contained in one area. This, of course, being a train. And then Drive a Crooked Road is another one with another one I pulled from an Indicator set with Mickey Rooney. This was a big...
My friend Jill wrote the essay about that, I believe.
Oh, did she?
Oh, was that Jill? Was that... Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Jill wrote that one.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, I listened to the commentary today, and it's just such a great kind of, it has all the beats there for a film noir, but once again, it's like bright and it's relatable. The main character is really relatable, and it's just such a great pace. Everything. It's just well crafted film. Then also I have The Prowler from 51, which is a Joseph Losey film, which I'm really getting into a lot of Joseph Losey lately. Was recently watching the 4K of The Servant, and I love that 4K. And but The Prowler is one where you really dig into kind of it's a weird movie of
it's a really gnarly film. Yeah,
it is.
Good.
Yeah, because it's like you got cop and the cops being sneaky and and then there's infidelity and there's and then they run away together. It's such an all over the place movie, but it's some of these ideas you're just like, man, who thought of this stuff back then?
Yeah, that's a wonderfully lurid film.
Yeah, but the last one that I'll bring up and I'll highlight a little bit deeper is one that I think is kind of a seminal one. And I listened. Speaking of Eddie Muller, I listened to his commentary today on this film, and I know it's a big one with Martin Scorsese as well. And that's 1952's The Sniper.
You took one of mine. Nicely done.
You're welcome. Edward Dmytryk. Yeah, this film is just, obviously a sore subject. It's a thing we're dealing with today with shooters and just, this film's interesting not only because it's for the time period, it's kind of dealing with something that's really like heavy, but it all and how it presents it can be pretty dramatic, but also that they kind of take a sympathetic angle to dealing with this sniper, and that's kind of a way you don't really look at a film like this, where it's about basically a serial murderer, going around killing women. Mariah, what do you think about the sniper?
It's one of my favorite ones, actually. It's I saw it for the first time maybe 5-6 years ago, but they had it in Noir City in Chicago in August, so I got to see it on the big screen this year. And one, I used to live in San Francisco, so I love it because it is a really beautiful San Francisco film. The location shooting is absolutely stunning. It's some of the most exquisite parts of the city are really wonderfully filmed. But also the lead performance, the guy is so nuts. But he does it in such a way that you kind of feel bad for him. And I think what's interesting about the film is that you do know he is doing it and he should not be doing this, right? And you feel bad for the women, you feel bad for everybody. But the film is the first to really look at psychologically, why is he doing this? And what could have happened earlier in his life so that he didn't get to this point, right?
And he spends the whole movie trying to get caught. I mean,
yeah, and I think it's a great. It's to see how we haven't fixed this problem in society. 70 years later is what makes it even more hard to watch, almost, because you think they were saying we need more psychological help for people 70 years ago, and we still don't have it.
It's still an ongoing problem in our society. Mental health is it's something I've brought up many times, that mental health is at least now in the public conversation. At least now people are talking about it, they're arguing about it, and maybe not a lot's getting done, but at least it's out there in some way. But when it comes to me and comes to some films that I wanted to mention, I'll just mention them quickly. I won't go into them too much. The Crimson Kimono, Sam Fuller made a lot of kind of great noirs. A film like Crisscross, Robert Siodmak, who he did so much work. Ride the Pink Horse, which was directed by Robert Montgomery and starring Robert Montgomery. And what's so cool about that movie is that it's a noir that doesn't take place in Los Angeles or New York. It takes place in a small border town in New Mexico. So it's kind of stretching the concept of noir can be anywhere. And then another Robert Wise film, which I think is great, it's a short film, there's a beautiful Warner Archive release of it, is The Setup. Great film. Just fantastic.
It's got to be one of my top boxing films.
Yeah, it really is fantastic. It's a great film.
Stars another Noirvember queen, Audrey Totter.
Yes.
She's in probably a dozen noir. And I think in The Sniper, Mary Windsor is in it. Marie Windsor, and she is in, I believe, 22 or 23 noir films.
Wow. So a femme fatale.
She's in The Narrow Margin too, which I believe you mentioned.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah,
she's great.
And The Setup's another film with Robert Ryan, who seems to pop up in several of these. Just kind of a great underrated actor. I don't think that he gets enough love. He was in The Wild Bunch and The Dirty Dozen, and those are later films, but he just an underrated actor, really underrated. A couple other films for me is Stephen already told my noir, but The Letter, William Wyler's film The Letter, starring Bette Davis, is great. Bette Davis is an all-time actress for me. I mean, when she was on in her early 30s work, I think she's one of the greatest actors I've ever seen on screen. Just stunning. Another Robert Wise film. There's a Robert Wise trend here. Odds Against Tomorrow, starring Ed Begley and Robert Ryan again. Fallen Angel is Otto Preminger and Dana Andrews, and it's the film he did after Laura, which is my favorite film noir of all time. So it's like, how do you follow up Laura? Well, he did Fallen Angel the next year, and it probably gets way overshadowed by Laura, but it's really really good. Yeah, you have like Raw Deal is another great film. Yeah, there's so many of us. We could go on forever.
We could do this. We could do this
all
but
day.
we could
And,
just do.
Odds
Yeah.
Against Tomorrow has a fantastic Harry Belafonte performance.
Yes, Harry Belafonte, great. Not just
he's so good in it.
great actor.
Definitely. Well, Mariah, we appreciate your time. And it was great celebrating our Noirvember with you this year on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, we hope that the book comes together for you well, and maybe we can have you back when closer around that time when maybe that book comes out.
Of course,
we could talk about it.
Yeah, it'll be a lot to talk about. A lot of films, a lot of filmmakers.
Great.
It'll be great.
Awesome.
Well,
man.
Yeah, I was going to
Go
say
ahead.
if there's any place that people can see your work, because I know you do a lot of writing for a lot of contemporary film. Doing a lot of reviews and for various websites.
Oh yeah, I guess the best. It used to be Twitter, but I've sort of
It's going by the
leaving.
wayside.
Twitter's kind of falling apart. I have a link tree, so it's Linktree/Old Films Flickr is where I archive everything. But I also have a Substack, oldfilmsflickr.substack.com, and it's a newsletter where I do a directed by women weekly guide every Friday. But I also send out links to my other writing from other websites and do various try to do more think pieces on there, but sort of kind of a catch-all place right now.
Yeah, is your website still up? I remember you had an Old Film Flickr's website.
Yeah, that was the Tumblr.
Okay.
I'm always on Tumblr, oldfilmsflickr.com. It's a Tumblr. I have never abandoned Tumblr, even though most people have. And I used to have a blog that was called cinema-fanatic.com, but I moved that over to the Substack.
Yeah, I remember your website, and you would do this every year. It would be just a list of I don't know if it was like 100 films and it was all films directed by women and where they were available to stream. That was a fantastic resource. Cuts out a lot of time looking.
That was on my Tumblr. That took a lot of work.
Yes.
But because back then that was like I think it was almost 10 years ago. And back then it was really hard to find 100 films by women streaming. And now like I do 7 to 8 a week. And that's of the hundreds and maybe thousands that are available. So it's definitely gotten better in terms of access. And then to like we were talking about with Doris Wishman, like some of these other older films by women are coming out on Blu-ray in a fantastic rate. And it's more than my wallet can handle pretty much.
Oh yeah.
Which is good though. I think we're in a good place.
Definitely. Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Kevzilla06. I still have it, even though I'm kind of just it's like watching the Titanic go down right now. It really is. But you can also find me on our YouTube channel, Chasing Labels.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings, or at all the other Chasing Labels pages, whether it be our Twitter, Instagram, or you can find us over at our Facebook group on Chasing Labels film podcast, film collectors podcast, and you can find the audio for the podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other places. Thanks again for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.